Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Becoming Unshakable podcast, where we really do focus on what it takes to be unshakable when the ground might feel a little bit shaky. And so on the show today, I have two guests. It'll be my first time doing two guests. And the first is that I'm going to welcome to the show is Kristina Fusella. And the second is Beth Sandin. And we are going to be having a really interesting conversation, really focused on leadership, women in leadership, and some of the struggles that are there, and how we as women actually can remain more unshakable in our shoes, and what's going to be the behaviors that will identify that. So welcome, Kristina and Beth.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so my first question to you is, what does becoming unshakable, what does that mean to you personally and professionally? Kristina, why don't you go first?
Sure. I love this term, becoming unshakable. I think it's something that is a discipline that you build over time. So I'm someone who practices Taekwondo. I've done it for 5 years. It's something that I've always wanted to do growing up. And when I think about being stable while the ground beneath you feels shaky, we do this thing where we have to be able to balance ourselves on one foot and execute whatever kicks that you want to execute in a series. So I think about that one foot where you have to ground yourself. And it doesn't mean you're not moving. It means that you're able to move and navigate the weight of your body as you're understanding the physics within. So becoming unshakable to me means that you're able to present a certain measure of calm and stability and focus during a time where maybe internally you're adjusting and maybe the ground is shaking, underneath, but you're able to persevere in that way.
I love that. And I love that kind of connection. Taekwondo. I love martial arts. I haven't done it in a while because my body's it's a little harder to do some of it. But when I was in my 30s, I did, and I absolutely loved it. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Beth?
Yeah, I agree. That was a great response from Kristina. And when I think about the term unshakable, I think about a specific time and conversation earlier in my career when I was navigating some challenging situations with cross-functional team. Some of the members much higher level than me, more experienced than me. And I was worried about coming off as the overly emotional female. And my manager at the time, a fantastic female, she said, you have to put all of that aside and just focus on the objectives. If we're all focused on a common set of business objectives, there's nothing you can't navigate. And that's true, not just in the business world, but I think also in our personal lives. So when I feel myself getting to that point where I'm going to boil over or cry, I just, to Kristina's point, I find some grounding and go, all right, what is it that I really want to accomplish here? What am I trying to get out of this? What's the objective? And I find that technique helps me really settle and focus on what's most important.
I actually like this concept, because I feel like it takes us from a more emotional side, maybe of responding, and that would be for anybody, because I think men and women both get emotional, right? Mm-hmm. Let's just be clear about that. Right. And so we all have feelings that can kind of bubble up. But if we ask that, like, what is my objective? It actually almost says, and how could I be objective about my objective? And it just helps to clear things away. I really like that strategy. I am curious to know if there's a time just that would just pop into your head where you really just struggled to remain that grounded person. And what did you do? What were some other strategies you entailed to actually be the person who was becoming unshakable? All right. What were some of the strategies and things you did? So what was the situation? Like, what did it look like? And then what were some of the things you did to kind of allow yourself to reground in that moment? Kristina.
So when I think of that, for me, I've had a very nonlinear career path. I have a very strong North Star. I want to be a well-rounded commercial leader. And in order to do that, I know throughout my career, I'll have to reinvent myself several ways to gain a toolbox, a variety of experiences. So in the 10 years I've been with Novo Nordisk, In the 10 years I've been with Novo Nordisk, I've held roles in a variety of departments and therefore have been the new person on the job every single time. And that's really daunting. This most recent time, I took an assignment on a rotation in the capabilities organization. It's actually a team that I have no subject matter expertise in, but I was there to develop leadership capabilities myself. So I was leading a team of experts. And that was really scary, where you're given this group of people and you're expected to produce vision and lead them to successful outcomes while not actually having any deep expertise of the work. So, but for me, because I've been in that situation where I've gone and just done different roles to learn and get a deep acumen of the business, I had one manager tell me this one time. He said, you're kind of like this Swiss Army knife. You can just jump into any deep ocean, and as scary as it is, but you just swim. And then eventually you believe that you can swim and you keep going. So for me, it's to embrace the fear. It's always going to be there. There's no use fighting it. It's always obviously very scary to walk into a room and you feel like you know the least in that room. But to also trust yourself that because you have that fear, that means you also have that motivation to overcome it, and that drive to reach a common objective with the team, to Mary Beth's point. And then you will conquer it, and then you will be better for it, and then everybody will be better for it. So for me, that's been my personal strategy of how to overcome feelings of fear, especially in a new daunting situation. It's to know from history you are that type of person and know how you react, but embrace it.
I love that. It kind of goes back to the whole thing, the thing we learned so many years ago, feel the fear and do it anyway concept, right? It's like, yep. And that's exact. Fear is the way. That is the way, the discomfort to the growth. So thank you for that. That was awesome. Mary Beth?
Well, what comes to mind for me with that question, Heather, is situational leadership. How to read the room. And, when you think you've walked into something that might be uncomfortable, just trying to read the room to understand what you can or can't impact, because sometimes there's nothing we can do in that moment based on the knowledge you have at hand or just the other dynamics, the other personalities, the other levels in the room. So I think really quickly sizing up to see how and where you can be effective, and then deciding, am I going to keep my mouth shut and seek other opportunities to follow up on this particular topic that'll be more productive? Or can I interject with something that will be productive and steer things the way that I think they should be?
Wow. It's so interesting. There's such a high level of okay, what I'm not saying is that, Kristina, you're not intentional. That's not what I'm saying here, but it's so interesting as I listen. Mary Beth, I definitely feel there's a lot more intentionality, and like you're thinking through that whole idea of like fear, like, and just going to do it. It's not entering into this equation because there's a lot of like, let me think through every angle. Let me make sure so there's a more of a carefulness to your response. So I am curious in this, I know that one of the things that you two have done and you're waiting to get published is an article, and it's really focusing on women in leadership. And so I'd like to know if any of these kinds of things, showed them rear their faces, showed up in that research about just generationally, the differences between some of the responses in the generations in these kind of situations. Because right now I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing it right on the screen. So I don't know. Tell me what you found out or discovered in that research in that article that you just published or about to publish. Kristina, whoever wants to speak can speak in this one.
Just handing over Mary Beth.
So just to clarify, the article was already published, and it didn't include any of our firsthand research per se. It's more anecdotal.
Okay.
And if I can just play a little bit off of maybe some of its generational and maybe some of its personality. But one of the topics we address in the article is around allyship and how it's important, especially as women trying to advance our careers, to be allies. And to the point about my thoughtfulness and approach and being deliberate, it comes from what I would call an allyship moment, if you will, when I was part of a large launch team, heavily male dominated. In fact, I was the lone woman on the team, and a lot of gentlemen with sales backgrounds, very gregarious, smart, and I would be quiet in the meetings, right? And one of the guys knew me pretty well, And he would pretty predictably say, hey, time out. Mary Beth's been awfully quiet, but I know she has something to add here. And lo and behold, I would have something to add. I would have been sitting there thinking, when am I going to interject my point? And by him doing that, he was certainly demonstrating what it's like to be an ally. And that helped me build confidence in myself to lean in and speak up more. But it also just showed me the power of being an ally and helping other individuals, male or female, out to get their space at the table, to have their voice be heard.
And so it does make me think of an element of self-leadership where we we know we have to lean on other people, or other people can help us kind of build confidence in ourselves so that we can then speak up on our own behalf. And so I do think that this idea of having allies, even actively seeking them out, is an element of becoming unshakable, because we cannot do this journey alone. And when we try to, I've been there, done that, it's a lot of work. It's exhausting. It's lonely. It's all the things. And so in this case, when you're the quiet one, I am the person that you just described. I'm the person who sees somebody and they're really quiet and I'm like, what's going on? I'm just a friend to all, irrespective of what their background is, right? But when I'm at a table and I'm noticing people are super quiet, I don't care who it is, I'm like an ally to the man or to the woman, whoever it is that's sitting there. And I think it's important because we provide access points. Those who might have a little bit more bravery, or want to be the person who speaks up, we're okay with saying, let's open the door to make sure that this other voice comes in. And I don't know, because I already can tell, Mary Beth, especially when there are people like that, when they are the quiet ones at the table, every time I would reach around and be like, come over here, or like, I want to hear from you. Oh my gosh, I would just be so amazed by how the thing that came from their mouth really changed everything at the table. It was like, wait a second. So what would happen if all the times we're at these tables, no one is bringing all these voices in? That means we're losing so many solutions, some really amazing innovations, or just super easy fixes to something we thought were really big, right? Anybody want to add anything to that?
I think it's what you said right there, Heather. It's not only a nice to have going forward, it's absolutely critical for a successful venture of any sort in any organization, I would say. That concept of allyship, or that strategic way to ensure all viewpoints are heard in the meeting, when you notice that some are quieter, some may feel less comfortable. And then even in this world where a lot of meetings are blended and some folks are virtual, sometimes you may not see someone raise their hand or someone put in a comment in the chat. Just to have someone in the meeting room say, hey, I saw Heather had her hand up on the call. Let's give a moment for, let's see what she has to say. And by doing that, you tacitly give everyone permission to become an ally and to notice those cues and to make sure that all voices are included. Mary Beth's story reminded me of one earlier in my career where I was in analytics. So I was supposed to present some data at a sales meeting, a local sales meeting. And I was very nervous about it. And I didn't really have the confidence to project my voice, or it probably came up as a pretty dry Excel-based presentation. And the vice president is someone who I admire very much. She came up to me afterwards and she said, when you do that, you really are the expert in the room. So next time, shoulders back, take a breath, project your voice. And she just gave me some advice and kind of took me under her wing. And it was the simplest thing to do, but it really gave me so much more confidence. And I just thought, wow, the senior leader has just noticed me. She's invested in me. And sure enough, I took her advice. I actually took myself to an improv class to figure out how to be able to think more on my feet. And that really was a really shaping moment in my career early on. And now as I become more senior in my career and become a senior leader myself, I purposefully will take the time. And honestly, as leaders, it's the simplest thing to do, to be more mindful of the talent around you and see who needs that little what you did here, Heather, actually, put your arm around someone and say, hey, what are you thinking? Tell me about it. But it really pays off.
I like that idea. It was what this makes me think of here is, as as we become like more senior, we become more confident that when we look at allyship and mentorship and kind of the responsibility and stuff that comes with that, it is when we show belief in other people, or when we invite other people to the table where their voices are heard, we help them become more unshakable too. So while we are kind of more grounded in our shoes, we provide the access point for them to become more grounded, because that belief in themselves makes them feel more grounded. So I really love that combined concept you two presented. I'm curious to know, as women, when the ground feels a little shaky, when right now the world is off its rockers, it's a little bit nutty right now. What do you two do to feel like you are more grounded in your shoes, that you are more centered in your decision making and how you show up in the roles you play? I'm curious to know, what are the tactical things that you do?
I would say it's a lot of it starts with giving ourselves grace. We tend to have hectic lives that aren't just about our careers and our jobs, with partners and kids and colleges and drama. So I think, giving ourselves permission to be human and taking care of ourselves, at least a monthly massage, and to-do lists. What do I have to do this week to feel good about my productivity, as a wife, as a mom, as a consultant, etc. And just give myself the grace and give myself the rewards when I say I checked those things off my list.
I love that. I think as women, especially, the standard that we set for ourselves is usually impossibly high, or it's so much higher than really it needs to be. And that comes across really clearly within the organization that I'm a part of at Novo Nordisk, Women in Novo Nordisk. We surveyed our over 2,000 members one time, and that was one of the insights, was that the expectations that we set for ourselves is extremely high, and know that that's really not the true expectation, and giving ourselves grace is absolutely critical. And then also knowing when to ask for help. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness, and accepting that. And so I think that's also really important. That's something that I've had to personally learn how to do a lot more. To Mary Beth's point, we have hectic lives outside of our careers too. And asking for help, whether it's from our partner or asking for help from a mentor or a friend at work, that goes a long way as well.
Yes, so good. You have to do that. We can't, we talk about the oxygen mask. We think it takes many forms. So it is the massage, and it is the person we call on, right? And I think people need to know that it takes so many different forms, that we have to find a way to, I always think about like strengthening our outer, keeping our soft, our inside still soft, because I think it's extremely important. Look at compassion, that be embedded in who we are and how we show up. Not just as women, just as humans. And then on the outside, saying, how do we become this force that when things are going a little bit out of control, that while we may shift and we may feel shaken right here, right, at the same time, we can maintain what Mary Beth was talking about earlier, which is like, as I look at what my objectives are, I want to remain objective. How do I remain so that emotions are good? They are good when they need to be there. And at the same time, sometimes we have to stop it to make the decision to say, okay, now it's time to put this in a box and to put it over there and to move on. Right. And so I think that's everything in its context, everything in its proper time. But this help from others is critical. So I am curious to know, when you think about, can you think of the person now who really impacted you the most as a leader, that maybe helped you have the ability to be both strong and show up with like paying attention, with listening, with showing up with that care and concern for other people? Are there any examples that you can think of that help shape your leadership style right now? And Kristina, you got somebody?
Yeah, I can share certainly one leader who's really impacted me. So a little bit of a backstory. This person she was someone who really helped me push myself at a time that I thought that I lost essentially belief in myself. He was one who believed in me. So the backstory there was, after I returned from maternity leave with my first daughter, during that time, I had postpartum depression, and it really just knocked me and set me back. It's something that happens to a lot of women, but it's something that for me felt like a failure. I think for a lot of women, it feels like, oh, there must be something wrong with me, and why can't I just think about being happy and therefore be happy. And it's really so much more than that, and so much more to do with biology. But that really set my confidence back quite a bit, having come back to work, conquered that, but then dealing with my new life as a working mother. So I was having a developmental conversation with my leader at the time, and I told her, things are kind of challenging for me to balance. I want to figure this out. I'm not really looking for too much intensity in my career or really trying to put my foot on the gas pedal here. And she just looked at me and she said, I know who you are, and that's not who you are. And she said, let's talk about that. Why can't you have both a striving career and a balance at home? Why not? And it's something that she did herself personally. And she said, you can absolutely keep your foot on the gas pedal and keep going. You don't have to take a break. And she said, let's just figure out how and what that looks like and what that means. And I thought, wow, that person right there, depending if I were a different leader, that could have taken my career to a totally different trajectory. And that's something that I take to heart. To me, is when I coach people and when someone approaches me with anything, I look for what is the best possible outcome, a win-win for that person, whatever they're looking for. And we try to aim towards that. So that was something that was a time that was a very powerful moment for me, but it's something that absolutely impacts the way that I think about my own career going forward, but also how I think about helping others too.
Such a strong example of instilling, like having the internal strength. So having someone give you open your eyes to the internal strength that already exists inside of you, that if the fact that you can do it, because again, you thought we were thinking it was going to be either or, and oftentimes we are presented with this, it's an either or type of thing. And obviously with women, we do this maybe a little bit more than most. We have to this, we have to that, not realizing it. But I think it was so amazing to have such a powerful, accomplished person who you respected open up your eyes and make you pause to go, but why not? So I think that, I don't know, I feel like sometimes the questions that we ask are more important than the answers that we give, right? And so when we ask those questions, it forces us to be our own solution. So this is such a great example of that. Mary Beth, what about you?
My example is similar but different. It was earlier in my career. I was a team of one working on a portfolio of products that had been acquired by my company at the time. And I was tasked with global relaunch and launch plans for this little portfolio. And I was really, really struggling. There was just so much to be done. And I saw so many opportunities, and I'm trying to get it done. I'm working long, hard hours. I was reporting directly to a VP franchise leader. And I went to her terrified. I have to ask for help, right? And she surprised me, not by telling me what my priorities should be, but by flipping the question on me, saying, well, what could you do if you had more people and if you had, more resources, which I never thought like I could actually ask for that kind of help. And so that was a really pivotal point in my career. And I went off and I put together an org chart and what it would look like, and, what kind of budgets we would need, and what the result would be in terms of more launches quicker equals, generating more revenue sooner. Right. And she liked it. We had to tweak it a little bit, but she built me up. She made way for me to present the proposal myself. She didn't do it, to the executive leadership team. And at the end of the day, and it was a few weeks, couple months, I found myself leading this much larger team than I ever anticipated. And I'm building it out myself. And I always think of this particular leader as someone that just knew definitely how to ask the right questions, but just pearls of wisdom, and like just ask a different question. How would this not be a struggle, right? What does it look like if it's not a struggle? And just an inspiring leader that I always look back to and still connect with for advice over the years.
I love the folks that stop us from being defeatist. I have 4 kids, and sometimes I'll have a couple of them that'll just automatically go down the road of like, this is not going to work, and it's, I'm going to be honest, it's extremely hard for me to have the patience or to even allow it, because they already know I have I have a mindset of, I don't believe in mediocrity. I don't produce children who are in middle of the road people. Like, it's just not who I am, and that's not how. And that's just not. So they'll know it. So they'll say, "I know, Mom. It sounds like it's mediocrity. I know it sounds like I'm doing middle of the road." And I'm glad that in your mind you're already thinking about, how do I make this happen? Stop being the victim. Like, they're doing it partly because I was always asking them, but how can you? You always have to ask those questions. And it's the same for myself. I think we need to ask ourselves those questions. When do we become our own cheerleader? When do we become our own advocate, where we stop ourselves right where we're at in our shoes and say, stop it, knock ourselves out. What are you doing? Stop it. You know you can do this. Look what you've done before. Versus always having to have the person as another person externally to us as a catalyst to, I always call it uncovering our gold. So my question is, what do you think that is, especially with women in leadership, that cause us sometimes to not see our blind spots or to not stop ourselves as we see them, and kind of be the ones who take the bull by the horn and do something about it? Kristina, what do you think?
That's an interesting one. And I think I'll go back to my earlier point about that expectation of perfection, or that unrealistic expectation of ourselves. I think especially for women, we feel like we have this love of perfection. We have a plan and we want to see it done. We have this high expectation of ourselves. And sometimes that could be a blind spot in itself. But the other thing is, I think, always challenge at any point. You may have a self-limiting belief that you don't even know exists. I think Mary Beth's example was perfect in that, where she didn't think she could have a team or could ask for more resources or ask for help. But sure enough, she could. So I think that self-limiting belief too, those are patterns that, those are thought patterns that are so ingrained into us that take an active thought to break and to challenge and ask ourselves the question, why not? What could be?
Oh, I love that. What the possibilities are. Like, how do we go deeper? Mary Beth, anything to add there on this particular topic?
Just the phrase that went through my mind immediately was people pleasers. I know I tend to be that way. I think a lot of us we want to be the pleaser, right? So we'll nod our heads, we'll say, yep, absolutely. And then you walk out of the room going, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get that done?
Yes, that is so true. And it's so interesting because, I know that there are men who are people pleasers too. I know that they exist out there, but it's so funny because I wish I could be like, I would look out in the world and be like, oh, I wish I could be kind of jerky like that. Like, I envy sometimes the people who are jerks, or the people who are like, I see sometimes they'll respond in a jerky way. Sometimes they're just like, nope, that's not going to be possible. And that is because of X, Y, Z. And they're just very, very, very clear. And you're like, I want to do more of that. I want to have more of chutzpah to say no in the moment, and to say why very, very clearly, and again, the objectively part thing, right? Because again, they're going to wait for us to go, well, and start to get, super emotional. And so I like the idea of just being the person who puts the brake on, and do it in a way that just doesn't leave room for them to kind of come back and argue anything other than that.
And once you do that, it's incredibly liberating.
And once you do it one time, you'll see it's okay.
Mm-hmm. It
is.
is.
The world doesn't end. And
that's right.
Yeah, and people deal with it, right? They see that, okay, this person can definitely place the mark and stand by it, and everything's fine. I am curious to know if there is one particular value that is a non-negotiable for you, and how that shows up for you.
Well, Heather, you've talked about how intentional and purposeful and analytical and objective I am, but one of my non-negotiables is fun. Like, we work too hard, right? And I'm not saying we have to go out to happy hour every Friday night or spend time together on the weekends. But I do think we need to take moments, whether it's at the end of a meeting or, once a week, to just relax and interact with our teams, our colleagues, as humans, right? Have a little fun, make a little joke. One of the teams I'm a part of, we often share, okay, we've got 5 minutes left. What are you watching on Netflix? And it just helps you relate on a different level and appreciate each other as, the people that we are, because we're not just our jobs and our titles.
That's a great question. Like, what do you watch on Netflix? That's awesome, because it totally does make everything personal right away, right? And everybody starts to get all giddy and, oh my gosh, oh yes. And I think that's cool. You see different sides of each other that you would ordinarily see if we're just sticking to business only. Kristina, what about you?
Yeah, I love that one. I think that one is now my new non-negotiable when it comes to a team. I think that's so important and it's critical to team culture, because when you were asking the question, Heather, there are so many things that bounced around my mind to me, it's really important to have people who have a desire and a willingness to contribute to the team and to contribute to the culture of the team. So it doesn't mean that you have to, love your job so much that you want to be there, day in, day out. But it's more that we have a team culture where we care about each other, and whether it's getting to know each other as humans, as opposed to just knowing what, our job responsibilities are. But also it's about contributing to a positive outcome for the team and that common objective. So to me, it's all tied together, where you have a positive culture and you're able to have fun together. That also equates into being able to achieve your common goal much more effectively. So I like Mary Beth's answer. I'm going to go with fun as well.
Nice. So for someone who's listening right now, who could literally just be trying to hold it all together, I mean, again, the world is a little bit off its rockers, and it is really, really hard to keep it all together. And so for someone who's listening right now, who might feel that way, what might you want to tell them to help them kind of be back on the journey of becoming unshakable?
Number one, they're not alone. They're not alone. So many of us might look like we have it all together, but we don't. And, look for help where you're comfortable asking. A friend, a family member, your journal. You're not alone. And as my mother used to always say, this too shall pass.
That's right.
And
it always passes. I'll also share some really great advice I once got from a mentor. And she talked about, and I think this is applicable in life, she was talking about a career where when you look at really successful people, their career isn't just a straight line going upwards. It's usually a series of bunny hops where there's dips and there's peaks and valleys too. And she said, what really differentiates a successful person from others who give up is what happens in those valleys when you're having a setback and when you're on an unshakable, or when you're on a shaky surface or things aren't quite as stable. It's what differentiates someone is what you do and how you reinforce yourself, how you really hone in on that moment to regroup and then be able to launch yourself back out there forward. So again, you're not alone. Everyone is going through something. But I think what will make someone come out of this so much more stronger is how you manage yourself through it and how you seek help, how you regroup yourself. So this is when diamonds are built under pressure. And right now, this is your time.
I was just telling my husband that, like, you could either choose to be the diamond that gets crushed, or you get the one that, like, under pressure, it turns out beautiful and shiny. And we do get the choice to do that, don't we? By the decisions and how we show up. And I agree with you. I think this is such at the core of becoming unshakable, which is, how do we get ourselves back to the center? So because all of us will be shaken, all of us will go off track. What are the things that we put in place to get ourselves back to the center and grounded, so that we can, like you said, take off from there? I love that kind of idea and that visual of that too. One last question for both of you. What's the one thing you had to unlearn in your process now of just in this journey that you've been on? What's the one thing you had to unlearn? Mary Beth.
Kristina probably knows what I'll say. I've had to unlearn that long hours do not equal automatic rewards and success. I started at a time when it was a badge of honor to be the first one in and the last one out. And that doesn't add up to a very nice work-life balance. And it's also completely not necessary. I've learned.
Thank you. Kristina?
I think comparing yourself to others, someone once told me, learning how to measure yourself by your own yardstick, that's critical. That's absolutely something. Everyone is going at their own pace. Everyone is on their own individual journey. And what's your journey is completely different than somebody else's. So not looking side to side and envying others, they're just not productive feelings. And it's never productive to really compare in that way, and to focus on your journey.
And now that we've had this conversation, is there one maybe behavior that you would like to adopt on this journey to becoming unshakable? Something that just, maybe since we've been talking, you're like, this is one thing I might want to just focus on a little bit more, just based upon what we've talked about today. And whoever wants to go can just speak up.
For me, I think it's being more bold when situations present themselves, and not shying away from what I think is important, what is right, what maybe needs or should happen.
I love that. Bold. Kristina?
I think for me, it's always remember the center and remembering to focus on the common objectives and the common goals, and not be distracted by things that are outside of your control, whether it's emotions, other people's emotions, focusing on that clear vision as a path forward.
It's so good. And I'm going to be continuing to think about the Taekwondo visual in my mind of, how do I stay balanced? How do I move through it? I'm grounded. I have this. I've got this. Like thinking about that from a level of confidence instead of waiting for permission to be who's already inside of me. That's what I'll be focusing on. You two have been amazing. I swear I could probably go on and on for a long time talking of just amongst ourselves. I really appreciate you coming on, and I know it took us a little while, but this has been great. I'm hoping for those who listen, please do listen and share it, because people need to hear this kind of stuff, and I think we get really practical solutions as we just sit in the presence of one another and hear about the real life experiences. So thank you so much, Kristina and Mary Beth. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Heather. It was fun.
And thanks everybody for listening to the Becoming Unshakable podcast. Be well.